Okay, here we go. A 1000 point Annihilation Legion Necron Army list. And it's coming right up.
Necrons!
Nick speaking, and welcome to this video. Right, here we go. We are continuing our 1000 point Necron Army list build videos. I'm building a list for each of the detachments, and today it's the Annihilation Legion. Now, not only do I do a list build video, but I also do a battle report of me actually playing the list. And I'm looking forward to this one because, let's face it, the Annihilation Legion is probably the weakest of the detachments. Now, Games Workshop did try to address the Annihilation Legion, but they did it with some points reductions. Now, the points reductions were useful. It meant we could put more units into the army. However, it doesn't really help the detachments because the detachment rules they're just not that great, really, to be fair. So you get to re-roll the charge roll for flayed ones and destroy cult units. And then if your opponent's under half strength, you can add 1 inch to it. A lot of the stratagems are designed for units which are half strength. So it's not that great, to be fair. Also, the detachment, whilst it is all about the destroyer cults, is only really useful for the Scorpec destroyers because it's an assault type benefit. So when you're playing with Locust destroyers and Locust heavy destroyers, they basically just really don't get much of a benefit. So it's definitely the weakest. Now, the Obeisance flanks, whatever it's called, was also at the bottom of the pile, potentially maybe the bottom of the pile before the updates. But of course, the way stratagems now work, the free stratagem shenanigan thing, the Obeisance flanks, which obviously is based around overlords, has definitely gone up in the world. I believe they actually won a tournament recently. So yeah, the Annihilation Legion is at the bottom of the pile. However, I don't care because I'm going to play it anyway because I'm here for fun. This is what the game for me is all about. It's about having fun. Now, 1000 points lists are just really difficult to build, generally. You could argue that Necrons are good at 1000 points because, of course, it's harder to wipe a unit out totally, so you get your RP on the units. However, I play against quite a competitive player who takes really nasty lists. He's an orc player, of course, you know him, CM Wargames, and with the amount of dice that he throws, he has no trouble wiping a unit out in one go and stopping RP. So I'm double whammy. Not only is it quite hard generally to make a Necrons list at 1000 points, to do everything that you need to do, score those primaries, score the secondaries, kill your opponent. That is hard, but also I'm playing against a nasty list. Richard has this really horrible list that he's tournament practicing with a unit of flash gits, with bad ruck, 2 units of looters, a truck, some killer cans, and some grots. It's horrible. It's horrible. However, like I said, I'm here for some fun. So I have got a 2000 point Annihilation Legion list. Now, I've only played this list once, and I played it before the points update, and I played against Wargaming. It was a fantastic game, and we had a lot of fun. And I played it because he's more of a fluffy player. So, yeah, I went for just the normal stuff that you would take in this type of detachment. 3 units of flayed ones, 3 units of Scorpec destroyers with a Scorpec Lord. Then I had 3 units of 3 heavy destroyers. I had a unit of Ophidian destroyers, a Hexmark destroyer and Death Marks, 2 units of Death Marks. They were to do the secondaries and just deep strike in. Then I had 2 units of small Scarab Swarm units to go in the corners because before Prior Nexus, Scarabs were great. However, yeah, obviously we had the points changes and I did really well with that particular list. I gained 160 points from the reduction in points from that list. Now, I did make a new list with those 160 points this is it. This is from the April points changes, and I made a video on this list. However, with Pariah Nexus now, this list needs another tweak, and it's a bit annoying, to be fair, with Games Workshop just changing the rules all the time. Like every couple of months I've got to tweak my lists and change my lists. I just want a list. I don't want to be able to pick up my army list and think, right, I'm going to play this today. I don't want to pick it up and think, right, can I play this today? Has the points changed? Have the rules changed? Are the units in it going to do what I need it to do now because of all the changes? However, this was my list. It was very similar. I dropped the death marks and I had an extra Hexmark destroyer. I had 2 units of Ophidians in this list, and I added in some Locust destroyers. I had 5 Locust destroyers in total. So I just added units to the list with the points that I had spare. So that was my 2,000 point list. As I said, I haven't got a Pariah Nexus list yet for it, but it's going to be similar to this, but probably no Scarab Swarms, more Locust destroyers. So I had to come up with a 1,000 point list. I didn't have to. I wanted to, because I want to show some love to this detachment, regardless of how I do on the table. I want to play it. You know, I love Scorpec destroyers. They're a cool looking model. I like to play the Scorpec Lord because it's a cool looking model. Now, of course, my 2,000 point list is quite spammy, not because I'm spamming units because they're great. I'm spamming units because it fits the theme of the army. 3 units of Flayed Ones, 3 units of Scorpec destroyers, 3 units of Locust heavy destroyers. Of course, what I'm going to have to do is effectively reduce the amount of units that I have in my list. My plan isn't to play anything different, just play the same units, but like a smaller version of them. So I dropped 1 Hexmark destroyer. I had my Hexmark destroyer in there, and his job effectively was to deep strike in and take some secondary objectives, hopefully like behind enemy lines or something. I had my unit of Ophidian destroyers who were going to deploy on the table, then they were going to teleport off of the table, tunnel off the table, and then come in. They're going to work with the Hexmark destroyer for secondary objectives. So I kept those 2 units in the list. Flayed Ones, I knew I couldn't have too many Flayed Ones, but I wanted them in the list. So I went for 1 unit of Flayed Ones, a unit of 10, because you can't have units of 20 anymore. Thank you, GW. I have 60 Flayed Ones. I have a list built around, not a list, I have an army built around 60 Flayed Ones, very thematic, looks awesome on the board, but no, GW, I can't do that anymore. Okay, enough of that. And then Scorpec destroyers, of course, I want Scorpec destroyers in the list. I can't have 3 units. I don't want 1 unit, so I had to settle for 2 units. So yeah, 2 units of Scorpec destroyers, and of course 1 Scorpec Lord, because you have to play the Scorpec Lord if you're playing Scorpec destroyers, because he's so cool, and actually he's half decent in combat. So with the points left over, I had to put in some heavy support. Of course, I had 3 units of Locust heavy destroyers with the big gun, the Gauss Destructor. I couldn't afford to have those in the list. In my Hypercrypt Legion list, I reduced those down to 2 units of 2. It worked reasonably well, so I tried that in this list. 2 units of 2 Locust destroyers with the Gauss Destructors. Now, I haven't mentioned this already, but my Scorpec Lord has the enhancement which stops my opponent from falling back on a 3+. It's called the Soulless Reaper. My Necrons dynasty is called the Soulless Necrons, so I have to have the Soulless Reaper as the enhancement, and it's a pretty decent enhancement. And that left me with 60 points left over. So to help score secondaries, I went for 2 Locust destroyers, 2 single Locust destroyers. I say to help score secondaries, potentially they could score secondaries, but also I'll be using them a little bit like I did the Scarab Swarms to help sort of block my deployment zone, to block sort of deep strikers coming into my deployment zone. So that was my list. It was exactly 1,000 points, and It looks like a lot of fun. My plan would be to infiltrate the flayed ones to get some early objective controlling. I would flank both units of Scorpec destroyers, and then if I get the secondary, we'll have to do an action on the sort of outside edges. They would be there to do that if needed. I would have my Locust destroyers, as I said, at the back in my deployment zone, and then I would have my 2 units of heavy destroyers on my home objective, just picking off units, hopefully popping off tanks. I would deploy my Ophidian destroyers and then tunnel them and have the Hexmark destroyer in reserve as well to help me score secondaries. That was the plan. However, how did it go? Find out very soon, because the battle report is coming. In the meantime, if you would like to see more 10th edition Necron list building videos, then here is my playlist, and here's my 10th edition Necron battle report playlist.